Niger's coup leaders have met with the 14th Emir of Kano in the capital, Niamey. Talks between Sanusi Lamido Sanusi II and the junta came ahead of an emergency meeting of the West African Regional Bloc today. ECOWAS is calling for the reinstatement of ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. Sanusi briefed Tinubu on his visit. In an exclusive with Arise News, he touts his commitment to restoring peace in Niger.
I can't tell you what I discussed with the president.
We saw you earlier in Niger today. Is that what you discussed with Mr. President ahead of ECOWAS meeting tomorrow, sir?
Yes, I came to brief him on the details of my discussion with the leaders of of Niger.
Would you say your intervention was positive, successful?
Interventions are ongoing, and we'll continue to do our best to bring the two parties together to improve understanding. This is a time for public diplomacy. It's not a matter that we leave to governments. All Nigerians, all Nigerians need to be involved to find a solution that works for Africa, a solution that works for Niger, that works for Nigeria, and a solution that works for humanity.
There are also reports that you took this initiative by yourself and not the government's delegation.
No, I'm not the government. I'm not.
Okay.
I was not sent by the government.
Okay.
The government officials were aware I was going, but it was my personal initiative using my personal contacts to get there, and I will continue to do my best. It is my duty as a leader to do that.
Well, Rufai, still developing stories from Niger, and interesting interview there. And well done to Adeswa Moro and our State House correspondent.
Very well done. Good job, Adeswa. But anyway, it's Arise TV. We always give you the exclusives.
Yes,
we are head and shoulders above all of them else. All right? So, I mean, let's make no bones about that. It's Arise TV. We're number one. Moving on. As regards that, also kudos to Emir Sanusi there. And he said he used his personal contact, which is good. And this is something a lot of people, we have also clamored for. That diplomacy should be the order of the day. Throughout last week, even despite the fact that emissaries were sent by the government there and they rebuffed them in Niger, we knew that there was a way they were going to crack it. We knew that there must be somebody out there that will be able to talk to the Nigerian coupist. And it came in the light of Khalifa himself. And Emir Sanusi, apart from being a leader in Nigeria, is also a leader in the Tanzania Islamic movement that is Tanzania that's spread across the African continent. And they have a lot of adherents in Niger. And he's the Khalifa of that movement. And he was able to use that personal influence also to meet there. He did not meet with the Nigerian coupist alone. He also met with them, with the Sultan of, I think, the third largest city, Dangarama, out there in Niger. And they had conversations. And he, cascaded those conversations down in that conversation he had with Adeswa, saying that talks are ongoing. What this gives President Tinubu is a better footing at the meeting today. So he has more grasp of the issues, and he can now say, this is what I'm going to take, and we can have conversations around it, which the AU did not have, which another person don't have. And it just shows you that Nigeria leads, we're heads and shoulders amongst everybody. Nigeria is not a small nation, we're a great nation, and we have people within our flocks that are able to talk, and I'm happy we're taking this route. But also, things have turned around in Niger, as a certain group called the Council of Resistance for Republic, CRR. There used to be a former big rebel group led by Risa Agbula, are condemning the coup in Niger. And they are saying they might have an armed revolt to be able to reinstate Bazoum in Niger. And this is something we should watch, because prior to this time, Niger had a lot of crises as regards rebel groups. Pockets and pockets of rebel groups everywhere. If this happens, there's also going to be an armed internal uprising in Niger that could also disrupt diplomatic conversations going on. So we should also watch this, probably also reach out to the group. If we're talking to the coupists, they should shield their swords at this point in time. Also, our sanctions are working. You know, there's been this contention that the sanctions do not work, but no, they are working actually. There was an interview among some Nigerians that proved that I think a 25 kg bag from about 10,000 CFA is now going to over 20,000 CFA. Price of food is on the increase, and also that some political leaders in Nigeria wrote a letter recently to President Tinubu saying things are really going south as regards the economy in Nigeria. So those sanctions are working. And I think if we can put all of that on the table, and with this very wonderful meeting, you know, we had, that Emir Sanusi had with the Nigerian coupists, and all the conversations put on the table, I think we can reach, you know, a reasonable conclusion of forwarded steps as regards it without necessarily going to war. So this is a good development. Kudos everybody, and let's see how this, but it's still a developing story.
Yes, it is.
And we must, I repeat, we must be cautiously optimistic as regards this. But hey, any optimism is welcome.
Okay, I'll talk about this in terms of the concept and the theory, the practice, and then derivables from latest developments. What is the concept and the theory? If you look at, I think this day newspaper, one newspaper today says diplomacy is back on the table. What is diplomacy? The art and science through which countries try to develop relations, peaceful relations with each other, pursuing individual interests. Now, what we have seen in the last 24, 48 hours will be of interest to students of diplomacy in the sense that what we're confronted with is a classical case of the contrast between old diplomacy and new diplomacy. Old diplomacy, the Bible on that, is R.G. Fetham's Diplomatic Handbook and the 1961 Vienna Declaration on Convention on Diplomatic Relations, the VCR. So Fetham, the Bible, VCDR, the protocols, regulations, etiquette, all spelled out. But what we have seen is that diplomacy keeps evolving. That's why the definition of diplomacy is very nebulous. Diplomacy under the old framework is no longer left to state representatives, to the elite of the society. Diplomacy, in its contemporary definition, has now become something that NGOs get involved in, non-state actors get involved in. So what we have seen in the last 48 hours, in my view, is a case of non-state actors within the framework of new diplomacy that is driven by modern technological advancements and, you know, cultural diplomacy, you know, getting involved in the business of diplomacy. Now, how do we define it? Emir Sanusi went on his own initiative to go to Niger. He met with the coup leader, General Chiani. He met with the emir of Damaragam, who was also in the picture that I've seen in one of the papers today. The emir, his name is Sanda on the Niger side. Two emirs coming together, meeting with the coup leader and saying, we want peace. Now, that's not the only non-state actors that have gotten involved in this. 11 political stakeholders in Niger also wrote President Tinubu to say, we don't want war. Bishops, Catholic bishops and archdeacons in West Africa, under the auspices of RECOA, also intervened and said, look, we are Catholic bishops and archbishops, we don't want war. The Izala and other major Islamic groups in Nigeria, under the leadership of Sheikh Dahiru Bauchi, also met with President Tinubu yesterday and said, look, we don't want aggression. Can you communicate this to your brothers? Okay? So we have had so many interventions from non-state actors, including the Jamatu Nasru Islam, including the Arewa Consultative Forum, including other stakeholders acting in their individual capacities. So for students of diplomacy, this is a clear indication of the conflict between old and new diplomacy. Diplomacy can no longer be left to the Foreign Ministry of Affairs, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. All of us are involved in it. However, where is the rub? The rub is that even when individuals engage in personal diplomacy, Emir Sanusi calls it public diplomacy. Well, the real word is really personal diplomacy, or if you like, cultural diplomacy, because he came in through the angle of culture. He being the Khalifa of the Tijaniya sect, which is a very popular sect in northern Nigeria and also in Niger. He got to that position in 2021. And that was why he said, we can't sit by and leave diplomacy to the experts and not get involved. But where is the rub? The question about non-state actors getting involved in diplomacy, which is supposed to be for the professionals, is that the experts or the state, is either you act on behalf of the state. He has made it clear he didn't act on behalf of the state. 2, or you act in opposition to the state, or you act in pursuit of public interest, which is what he clearly said he did. Now, where the challenge is that will these non-state actors be listened to by those who still operate under the framework of old diplomacy? So that's where the challenge is. What is important is for President Tinubu and the other ECOWAS leaders to listen, to take notice of this intervention by non-state actors. Because it's the non-state actors who are saying, this is the interest of we, the people. Can President Tinubu commit on the basis of ECOWAS resolutions without taking due cognizance of the feelings of the Nigerian people, which seems to be, crystallizing along both religious and ideological lines. So these are the issues. Catholic bishops, Emir Sanusi, the Izala, the Darika, the Ansaruddin, all of them coming in and say, we don't want war. These are important indications in this battle. Now, ECOWAS leaders will meet today. We hope that when they meet today, they will take all of this on board. And that's our recommendation. And not just say, oh, this is what ECOWAS resolution tells us. The thing is that, look, it's not about ECOWAS resolution. Article 2 of the ECOWAS treaty, as has been pointed out by civil society organizations, including the group that Kayode Ajulo has led to the court, the amalgamation group, in that regard, and Professor Akinterewa and Damani, a lawyer. They are saying that all the conventions and treaties of ECOWAS do not promote aggression. So where is this resort to aggression coming from? Contrary to the Rome Statute, contrary to the Vienna Convention, and contrary to all known, established protocols and conventions and treaties on the matter. First, you adopt the Pacific approach. That's what the UN Charter says. The Pacific resolution of disputes. But, ECOWAS seems to have put is it the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart? And now they are trying to roll back. But it is important to know the role of non-state actors, which is a major feature of new diplomacy, and for governments across West Africa to listen to these non-state actors who are direct representatives of the people, indicating that diplomacy is not for the experts alone. All of us are involved in it because we are all stakeholders. That's the significance of Emir Sanusi's intervention and the intervention by the various stakeholders, the political stakeholders from Niger, the Izala, the Darika, and all the groups led by Sheikh Dawiru Bauchi, and also the Catholic bishops and archbishops speaking under the umbrella of a group known as RECOA. So today, we'll see what happens, whether we have in West Africa leaders who listen or leaders who are deaf to the plea of the people.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor, for making such a great case for cultural diplomacy as we saw play out yesterday. The picture was trending. A number of people saw that the 14th Emir of Kano had gone to Niger and was received. That's the significance of that. Because prior to this, ECOWAS had sent delegations to Niger, and this had been aborted because the Niger coupists refused to see them. And in fact, in some instances, it was said that they had disrespected not just the delegation, but ECOWAS as a whole. However, the relationship, or perhaps from a religious perspective and point of view, the former Emir of Kano was able to receive audience from the coupists. And even though we don't have the details of their conversation, as was explained or said in that interview with Adeso Omoran, he did mention that he had given the president of Nigeria, who also acts as chairperson of ECOWAS, feedback. And hopefully, the feedback from his meeting, if you see the body language of that picture, it looks, as Mufa had mentioned, being cautiously optimistic, it looks like a fruitful meeting. At least the coupists would have had the opportunity to lay their terms on the table, and then these terms can then go on to the table at the meeting today. The concern, as I'd expressed yesterday, was that the coupists weren't even willing to speak to anyone. So how do you have diplomatic conversations with a group who is not open to dialogue? And so the fact that this first step of dialogue has finally been successful, at least to the best of our knowledge, is a good sign. And it definitely also demonstrates the fact that perhaps dialogue would be the way forward with Niger and ECOWAS and perhaps all the countries involved, because we've seen US and the West also coming in to indicate that they might also have to intervene in Niger. Now, beyond that, talk about sanctions. As already was mentioned, 11 political leaders, political groups in Niger had written a letter to ECOWAS, especially addressing to the chairman of ECOWAS and President Bola Tinubu, that the impact of the sanctions on Nigerians was horrible. It was crippling the economy, and the people who were suffering from these sanctions were the people, the civilians themselves. And this is a conversation that often occurs when we talk about the use of sanctions in dealing with countries' diplomacy, and the fact that sometimes the people or the target do not get the hit when it comes to sanctions. It's the people who get the hit. The airspaces have been closed, medical, food supplies have not been able to get into Niger, borders have been closed, trade impacted. And don't forget, beyond Nigerians, it's also their trade partners, especially the northern part of Nigeria, where the states border with Niger. There have been concerns around around trade and economic activities on these corridors. So that's something to definitely explore. So in saying that the sanctions work, yes, the people feel the pinch, they feel the bite, actually, not just a pinch, but does it impact on the decision of leaders to capitulate or to listen to the demands of other countries? So that's where the challenge is. So whilst the people suffer the effect of sanctions, will the leaders who say they're working on behalf of the people but do not, listen or are not sensitive to the needs of the people when sanctions are placed, does it really work? Then finally, I'll talk about Mr. Femi Falana, SAN's perspective on addressing the reason behind the coups. And this also has come up a number of times. We talked about this earlier, that beyond the conversation today at the ECOWAS meeting around how to address what's going on in Niger, must be that African leaders, especially the West African bloc, must have honest conversations as to why these coups occur in the first place. There have been conversations around the pushing of more than 2 terms in office. We know the issue with the Senegalese government, the Burkina Faso issue, and countries like that, whom some of their leaders will be at the meeting today, who have extended their tenure beyond the 2 terms that originally stipulated in their constitution. So conversations to be had beyond just responding to the issues, but how to prevent further occurrences. We'll move on to our next story. The Niger Delta Exploration and Production Company on Friday unveiled its new corporate identities, which include a new name, a new logo, and official colors at a well-attended grand event in Victoria Island, Lagos. The fully integrated indigenous energy company is now to be known and addressed as Aradel Holdings, a name influenced by the company's heritage, founder's legacy, and future industry path. According to its promoters, Aradel Holdings serves as the mother organization to 4 distinct subsidiaries with a multifaceted operation which extends across the upstream energy business, gas processing, refinery renewables, and other investments. With 30 years of uninterrupted operations, Aradel Holdings started as Midas Drilling Fund before it was rebranded as Niger Delta Exploration and Production PLC in 1996. By 2010, Aradel Holdings had commissioned a mini refinery for the refining of crude produced from the Ogbele field. Management says the company will not relent in its pursuit of creating an energy mix that is both sustainable and accessible to all, while also achieving net zero emissions.
We have a robust and very well articulated strategy to take full advantage of the opportunities that lie ahead, while at the same time managing the attendant risks.
Most local companies have died because they do not adhere to the principle of corporate governance. So Aradel is a great example. They have made significant return to their joint venture partners, and today I have not heard NNPC speak in the room. But I can tell you that this is one of the companies that NNPC Limited is proud to associate with.
The Nigerian Midstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, which is to recognize the excellence set by the Niger Delta Exploration and Production, PLC, and all its subsidiaries in the upstream and midstream sectors of the oil and gas operations in Nigeria over the last 3 decades.
Partnership is a core Chevron value, and we're happy, very happy to be part of the success story of Aradel. And I'd like to reiterate Chevron's unwavering commitment to continuing to strive to be partner of choice in building productive, collaborative, trusting, and beneficial relationships across the Nigerian oil and gas industry.
We had a whole captive hall of people. And the first question they asked was, is this company owned by the federal government of Nigeria? And we said no. And it was like, you must be high on drugs to come and talk to Bunyan Energy that you are going to supply gas. Indeed, we achieved that. And today, we are the only non-JV gas supplier to Bunyan LNG. I guess some people will be wondering what does Aradel mean. As Africans, we love telling stories. And the name Aradel is not an existing word. It's a creation of the stories that brought us to the point where we are. In that name, we are fusing a very rich heritage and past to a very bold and aggressive future. That name can be interpreted from 3 verticals. The first vertical is that the word Aradel itself is an acronym of the DNA of the company.
Okay, Aradel Holdings there. Congratulations to Aradel Holdings.